Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, in this lesson, inshallah, we'll be analyzing the poem My Pretty Rose Tree by William Blake. A flower was offered to me, such a flower as may never before, may never bore. But I said, I have a pretty rose tree, and I passed the sweet flower over. Then I went to my pretty rose tree to tend her by day and by night. But my rose turned away with jealousy, and her thorns were my only delight. So, this My Pretty Rose Tree by William Blake, it represents the harshness that jealousy can bring to any relationship. Despite Blake's commitment to his rose tree, that rose tree turned from him because of his previous encounter with the flower. Still, Blake continues to seek the affection of his rose tree. What this represents overall is that honest love can go punished and hurt if it is paid by a lack of trust. And this brief poem brings this idea into clear focus. Now, with this, we move on to the stanza by stanza analysis. The first stanza: a flower was offered to me, such a flower as may never bore, but I said I have a pretty rose tree, and I passed the sweet flower over. So this stanza shows loyalty. Blake says he was offered a flower, but he refused it because he already had his pretty rose tree. The words show the difference in importance. A tree is bigger and more valuable than just a flower. Even though the flower was attractive, it could not compare to the tree, so there was never really a chance he would choose it. However, the poem still praises the flower. It is described as a flower as may never bore, meaning it was more beautiful than anything normally found in nature. Since May is a time when flowers are at their best, this shows how special and tempting it is. The flower is also called sweet, which shows that Blake does admire it, even though he rejects it. It is important that Blake did not go looking for the flower. He was offered it. This shows his loyalty because he was already satisfied with his rose tree. His quick decision to refuse the flower and stay with the tree proves he was not tempted enough to leave. The rhyme scheme AB also reflects this loyalty. It is regular and steady, showing Blake's comfort and commitment to the rose tree. Even though the rhyme changes slightly from A to B, it always returns. Okay, just as Blake remains faithful to his rose tree. So it is changing from A to B, but it is going back to A. Okay. With this, we move on to the second stanza. Then I went to my pretty rose tree to tend her by day and by night, but my rose turned away with jealousy, and her thorns were only my delight. Even though Blake shows no sign that he seriously considered being unfaithful, the rose becomes upset and full of jealousy. She even turned away from him when he went to tend her by day and by night. This suggests that her jealousy was not just a one time feeling, it continued constantly, both day and night. As time goes on, her thorns become his only delight, showing that the relationship has changed. It raises the question: why is the rose tree so upset when Blake stayed loyal? He even mentioned his pretty rose tree as the reason for refusing the flower. One reason could be that he only returned to the rose tree after speaking to the flower, shown by the word then. This might make the rose tree feel like a second choice, even though Blake quickly rejected the flower. In the poem, too, the rose tree is not fully described until the second stanza, which adds to this feeling. In reality, Blake never placed the rose tree second, but the poem shows how jealousy can make love unstable. Even though Blake was faithful, the fact that he noticed the beauty of the flower was enough to upset the rose tree. The rose tree represents his true love. The rose is a symbol of beauty and romance, but it also has thorns, which represent the pain and jealousy in the relationship. These thorns show the danger within love itself. Interestingly, Blake calls these thorns his only delight, even though they hurt him. This shows how deeply devoted he is. Despite the pain and rejection, he still values the relationship and stays committed. This is also reflected in the rhyme scheme, which continues throughout, just as he continues the relationship. Overall, the poem shows how love mixed with jealousy becomes unstable. Beauty is mixed with pain, and even though both sides are unhappy, the relationship continues. It suggests that jealousy can damage something that could have been truly pretty and happy. With this, we move on to the themes of this poem. The first theme happens to be loyalty versus temptation. The speaker stays loyal and rejects the flower, but the situation still leads to tension. This shows that even resisting temptation does not always prevent problems in a relationship. Next theme is jealousy in relationships. The rose tree becomes jealous despite the speaker's faithfulness. This highlights how insecurity can harm a relationship even when there is no real betrayal. Next theme is miscommunication and emotional distance. The rose turning away shows a lack of understanding between the two. Even though the speaker is devoted, the relationship suffers because feelings are not properly understood or shared. With this, we move on to the symbol. The symbol present in this poem is the thorn. The thorns show that love can include suffering, especially when mixed with jealousy. Poetic devices and figurative language. The first one happens to be symbolism. Okay, so the rose tree represents committed love or relationship, while the flower represents temptation. The contrast between them highlights the conflict between loyalty and desire. Next device is metaphor. The entire poem works as a metaphor for relationship. The thorn symbolize the pain and jealousy within love and within relationship. The next is personification. The rose tree is given human qualities. She turned away, showing emotional reactions like jealousy and hurt. Imagery. Natural images like flower, May, and rose tree create a vivid contrast between beauty and pain. The shift from sweet flower to thorns shows how something beautiful can also be harmful. The next literary device is irony. The phrase my only delight is ironic. Why? Because the thorns, which symbolize pain, are called a delight, suggesting either emotional confusion or acceptance of suffering in love. Next literary device is hyperbole. Such a flower as May never bore. It exaggerates the beauty of the flower, emphasizing how strong the temptation is. Let us now move on to the form and rhyme scheme and meter of the poem. So, the form. The poem consists of two quatrains, four line stanzas. First stanza is talking about temptation, and second stanza is talking about consequence, yani ke jealousy and regret. This structure reflects a clear emotional progression. Now let us talk about the rhyme scheme. The poem follows an ABAB pattern. This regular song-like rhyme is typical of Blake and helps make the poem memorable, while also highlighting contrasts such as flower versus the rose tree. The last but not the least is the meter. The meter is irregular but generally based on iambic and anapaestic rhythms. Most lines have three strong beats, यानी के trimeter. This variation reflects the emotional shifts from calm loyalty to tension and discomfort. With this, we end the analysis. I hope you understood everything. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask.